Question 705. Can we ethically use scientific advancements based on unethical investigation?
Oh.
Depends on
I mean,
situation.
I guess it's one of those things like, even if it's done unethically, like I mean, you know, if you know, like for example, if it's like, you know, medical experiments that are carried out on like prisoners or something like that,
Yeah.
which is totally unethical. But there is a breakthrough used. Do we just throw out the science?
Well, this is the problem.
Because it was obtained by really unethical means.
Yeah.
And I'd be disgusted by the means that it is obtained, but if the science is valid, I'd be inclined not to throw it out.
I don't know how you can throw it out is the issue.
I really think it would depend on the situation. Like, if you're experimenting on kids to benefit the world, then I would go with no. But like, if it's like somebody that just went around murdering people, then yes and no, because like they're already a piece of shit for just murdering random people, but like they are human. Unless you're a ginger, then you're not human.
I would personally go with shut that shit down. Like if you were doing unethical experiments, shut that shit down. But I'm not for burning the studies themselves. I don't see any problem with somebody looking over them and seeing that if there's anything that useful that can come of the horror that happens.
Yeah, I mean,
but is that not encouraging other people?
No, because you make sure there's a decent fucking punishment for the people who've done the wrong thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's like, obviously, probably the most infamous example from history is some of the experiments the Nazis did on people in concentration camps, whatever. Yeah. Now, at least some of, and I'm going to preface this, some of the discoveries they made may have been medically valid. A hell of a lot of it was completely junk, fucking eugenics rubbish. A lot of it was, but it was arguable that one or two things came out of it that were useful. That doesn't mean that is no justification for what they did. However, if the data is valid, do we just junk that because it was obtained by the most unethical of means? And I'm inclined to say no. I just think we can keep the data, but we when we go forward with research, we've got to do it by ethical means. Would be where
that's what I was going to say, Jeff. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Was
where I kind of.
Let's go to the chat.
And obviously the people, a lot of the people that did those crimes in that particular instance were put on trial or whatever after the war for the shit they did, and executed or put in prison, whatever it was.
The fact of the matter is, it already exists. There's plenty of science out there that was gained through unethical means, and you're talking about in this hypothetical anyway. It's already happened. Why throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak? Well, obviously, you don't want to go about things unethically, but
there are still things. Did you see the link that Kaz put in?
Sorry, I was going to say there's another historical example I can think of, and I was just thinking about this now. Obviously, Amanda and we both know Chris Shelton, former Scientologist. Now we know how Scientology feels about psychiatry as a profession, and now there is a certain point, if you do look at some of the history of psychiatry, there was a lot of data and stuff in that was obtained by some seriously unethical shit in the history of psychiatry, which is about the one thing Scientology might actually have a fucking point about. However, they come to a certain point where that data was useful or whatever, and they were able to proceed in a far more ethical kind of manner. Do we throw that out because a lot of the original material was?
The problem is you're justifying another doctor saying that the ends justify the means.
Am I by doing that though? Really?
I think if you say that research is going to be kept, then another person that thinks they are above other people.
Are we? This is tricky. This is a very tricky thing, but it's kind of do we junk something that is scientifically valid at any point whatsoever?
Well, this is the problem you've got. It's not going to not be scientifically valid, and that's the problem. Yeah. If you have an answer to a question, it's an answer to a question.
Yeah.
It's one of those questions as to can you ignore it if it's there.
I don't think you can ignore the way you can never ignore the means it was obtained by, and I absolutely think I think the general consensus that the people who obtained it by those kind of means need to be held to account. And there's no but at the same time, do we just throw that out and maybe set ourselves back a number of years?
Well, I mean, I think that would determine, so if this is the only way that people are going to get this data is by doing it unethically, or if there's people who are doing this ethically and getting the same results, then I think you can throw it out. I mean, it's more... see, this is it's like asking, is stealing wrong if you're doing it for the right reasons, in my opinion. There's going to be people that say there's no right reason to steal, or there's going to be people on the other side of the fence if you're stealing to provide for your family, then that's the right answer. You can't really... I think this is kind of like a...
You can argue it's on a case-by-case sort of situational basis, I suppose. You can argue.
Right.
Apart from the fact that when
the conversation got...
It goes back and forth.
Someone else want to weigh in on this, because
just let me catch up on the chat. Let me catch up on the chat. Nevermore Tavern says yes. Gary says, this is a toughie as I want to say no. Natty says no. Gary says, but I know we have made advancements on the back of unethical acts. Jones says, not if we have the chance to stop the investigation now. Mathpig says, they covered this in Star Trek Voyager.
I mean, the best idea I could think of is the atomic bomb. Was it ethical?
Yes.
Some people might disagree with the yes.
But the research is the point that is that there is nothing unethical about the research for the atomic bomb.
Fair.
Apart from maybe some of the experimentation of the fucking bombs where they blew them up near people. Right. But there was nothing, and even then they didn't really necessarily know. Okay, specifically we're talking about...
we have to, and obviously, if you think on the back of that as well, that nuclear power is like a byproduct of weapons-grade plutonium, ultimately.
Yes.
So...
Well, then I guess you'd have to throw... Because, Dave, you kind of hit my next point. I think, could the question be answered, do they know that they're doing it? Do they know?
Within the context of what we're talking, well, this is the problem. A lot of the stuff I've read about I've not read anything of people doing it that recently, but going back pre-1950s. Okay, doctors that were doing things that were unethical on people tended to consider themselves working towards a greater good or being better.
A pioneer.
Yeah. It's not that they didn't necessarily think it was wrong, they just think it was justified.
Well, they didn't actually realise the negative effects to what they did.
Well, True. Another big example historically, if you go back to the Victorian era, or from say most of the 19th, from the late 18th to most of the 19th century, you people who were the people who literally robbed fresh graves to sell cadavers to medical students or whatever to do dissections on. at the same time, you can argue the ethics of whether that was done. And obviously, the most famous case was probably the case of Burke and Hare, who literally went the next step and actually started murdering people.
It's easier, and they're fresh.
Yeah, which actually started. They actually did. They actually started
basic capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, they kill people, sell the bodies to, the medical profession, because the whole idea of, dissecting bodies was kind of seen as a bit of it wasn't even in that wasn't really socially acceptable. But that whole practice led doctors to understand a lot more about the human anatomy, and there was huge advances in medicine that were made off the back of that. Was it ethical? I don't think it necessarily was, but
let me catch up on the chat.
Also got experiments done in psychology, like the Milgram shock experiment, where they where the test was you were ordered by somebody to shock this other person if they respond, depending on how a response was done, and you were told by the examiner to turn the shock levels up or down, and people were hearing somebody scream from behind the wall, but they couldn't actually see them, so it was all acted, but they didn't know it. No. And people were following the orders of the people. It was a thing about people an experiment about people following orders. It was done in the 1960s, and I mean, highly unethical now. The trauma that the people who actually did the experiment came out with was enormous, but they didn't know better back then. It's not necessarily a defense of it, but it's a thing that we know better now, but that's not a reason to throw out the results of the experiment.
No, agreed.
Yeah.
But the problem with that, the problem you've got with that is that we now can't investigate that. We've now got a set of results that we can't confirm.
I mean, I'm just thinking of something like Natty. I just was reading in the chat, like the MK Ultra program, where which was obviously a hugely unethical shit that the CIA did. And I know that MK Ultra is a favourite thing of conspiracy theorists, but you can actually look. A lot of this shit did happen.
Oh yeah, there's some nutty things in there.
Yeah, and a lot of the experience of LSD or whatever, But is it arguable that maybe there were some things that came out of that may have been beneficial longer term? I don't know. I mean, it's
probably not.
Probably not on the long term, but there may have been. Let
me catch up on the chat quickly. Natty, this is kind of a grey area. Gary, I think the only cases would have to completely disconnect intent with utility. Natty, well, I mean, if it's a past bad thing and applying that knowledge in an ethical way, maybe. Once you have the knowledge, you can't unknow it. That's my key point. If we can, the USA has done that with Nazi Germany. I don't follow that.
So hold on, what's Gary saying?
Where are we up to? I'm still way behind, so I'm trying to catch up. Jones says unethical for who? We're talking about, society as a whole. And then Natty comes to the MK Ultra stuff, things like MK Ultra. Yeah. Various experiments. Skip over. We talked about that. The sanctions for people doing unethical experiments need to be harsh enough to deter copycats. I think you're right. I mean, it's one of those things where I do wonder whether or not you can write their name out of history. Completely and utterly. You turn around and say you will only remember the name of the victims.
I just heard something about Nazi Germany or something, and then first name that springs to mind from then would be someone like Werner von Braun. Clearly, was a member of the Nazi Party. Certainly, if not directly involved, was certainly probably at least aware of some unethical shit that was going on around him.
Well, Braun knew because he used Jewish slave labor to build some of the rockets. So he knew.
He fucking knew. Yeah, the same guy is most directly responsible for getting man landed on the moon.
Yeah, but now, directly responsible for putting NASA in the position it was.
There's your ultimate example there. And now, people, do we want to weigh up the benefit here? some people will probably say, and I know even some people in this conversation, in this panel, would say that landing man on the moon is arguably, possibly, arguably, the greatest accomplishment our species has ever made.
No, I disagree with that.
No, I disagree with that.
But you might. I know.
No, it's impressive and everything. But...
Yeah,
I know. It's
I know.
impressive, but it's not the greatest. No.
I Manda might beg to differ. I don't know. I don't want to speak for Manda on this, but I know. She might argue that's one of the most impressive, one of the greatest scientific achievements humanity has ever made. At the same time, we have to remember.
Jeff, shush. Manda, what did you say?
Sorry, Manda, go on.
I said in terms of complexity, yes, it is the greatest achievement. In terms of advancements for either ourselves or other species on the planet, what did it actually gain us? I mean, not to shit on my own company. I love NASA and everything, but
my point is, I'd say the shuttle was more of an achievement than the moon landing in terms of advancements.
Yeah. And get the entire science behind getting the shuttle into orbit, and
I'd say even the shuttle, though, would that have been a thing without von Braun?
No,
NASA wouldn't have been a thing at that point without.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they would have eventually, but they would.
No, they would have eventually. I'm not saying they wouldn't. But my point.
Orbiter around my neck, by the way.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there were some great rocket pioneers in the US even before, but von Braun had moved to the next stage. But I mean, it was no better for Russia. I mean, Russia got in and picked up a whole heap of leftover V2s and took them back and pulled them apart and figured out how they worked. So both the US and the USSR were building off German technology.
Yes.
Well, I've said this.
But at some point, someone has to take the ethical responsibility. I need to get through the chat quickly so we can.
Sorry, I'm pretty sure. Sorry, Dave. I will just get this out there. I'm pretty sure I've said before, though. When there's things like an arms race on, you will see the ethics book will get thrown out the window. And that's a sad reality.
Yes, completely and utterly. At the end of the day, this is one of those things. When you've got total war, which is what we had at that point in time, ethics are somewhat irrelevant. If you are at risk of actual absolute destruction, you do what is necessary. I mean, this is why, at the end of the day, this is why Germany kind of fucked itself. Because it wasn't doing what was necessary, it was doing all this other shit. Right, chat.
Next question.
I've got to catch up on the chat.
Dave?
Yeah.
What?
Did any of us answer?
Did any of you answer this? Well, lots of people in the chat. Basically, they're arguing at the moment in the chat that ethics is relative, which I completely agree. It's war. See, had meaningful intent. Lots of people had good intentions. Snapped. Right. Okay. I'm gonna have to skip over all that. Basically, you didn't. None of you gave a nice, consistent yes or no answer. Which would have been good.
There isn't a consistent yes or no.
No, I know there isn't.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Jen. There is no yes or no. The bottom line is that even though it's unethical, we're not going to ignore that science. And it's already been done. People were already tortured. Animals already tortured. Why throw that away anyways when we can use that to better our own selves and help people more? You're not going to toss out, like Amanda said, don't toss the baby out with the bathwater.
And I should point something else out. If you have that data to hand already, now if you just throw it out or whatever, you don't know necessarily going forward whether you can achieve that same thing without doing something unethical.
No. So but then you're literally saying the ends justify the means there.
I don't think I am.
No,
I don't think I am.
No, because we're not saying you should be able to do that.
No, but you're saying that the person that did there was no other way to get it.
No,
Dave, I said that's a hypothetical. Well, you don't know going forwards, do you? Whether that's
and I think you're making a straw man there, Dave.
I think you're right.
I'm sorry, you are strawmanning the fuck out of me there.
Of course I am.
I know. I'd be fair. I know you're doing that just for the purposes of discussion. I get that, but
you know that's not what any of us are saying. We're all saying that yes, you should. That they should have followed.
No, but my point is to push the fact that you have to deal.
We'll have this. No, we're not saying that. We're saying if somebody does do that, well, let's find out what we can find out from what they did. Maybe then engineer better experiments that are not unethical to confirm said results, and then move on from there. But still punish the person who was unethical in the first place.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we'll go with that. And Wes says the end does justify the means. He'll say it.
I'll hand it to you, Dave. That's a very good question.
I think it needed longer.
I think you could do an entire panel just on that without being a crazy question.
Yes, I think you're probably right. I think there's a few questions we've had like that we might come back and revisit in depth.
We've had some good questions,
especially the Smurf one.
Especially the Smurf one.
The Smurf one is definitely
tick mark that one, Dave,
question.
and we'll just do a whole stream about it. We'll have an epic stream on medical shit.
Right.
Well,
next
quick,
question.
Before we wrap
go on.
Okay. I wanted to throw in so as you guys were saying, you don't want to get rid of the results just because they were unethically obtained, because then basically the sacrifices of the victim, whether it be human, animal, you're basically just saying, well, their sacrifice didn't mean shit. So I mean, we just want to get rid of all of this. We want to act like it didn't happen, and that, in my opinion, would just be as bad as letting the experiment go on. If you, just because something bad happened doesn't mean you should ignore it. You should just take precautionary steps to avoid this happening in the future.
If you enjoyed that, please hit the thumbs up button. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down. If you think you've got a better answer or just want to tell us how wrong we are, leave a comment down below. Subscribe down here for new questions every day, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on our live shows. If you click over here, you'll see our latest upload. Over here, for what YouTube thinks you'll love the most. And finally, for a complete playlist of all our currently released questions, click here.